Well, I'll just say that I'm from Texas. I don't know if you guys knew that. I grew up in Lubbock until I was 10 years old, and then we moved to Dallas, the Dallas area after that. And 13 seconds after I graduated high school, I moved to New York City. And my whole family's still in different parts of Texas, and I get, obviously come back to see those guys and gals several times a year. So this is basically home, and how I got involved in filmmaking was I was in New York City working as a bike messenger, and I had interest in music and writing and photography and poetry and storytelling, and film kind of was a marriage of all of those art forms that I was interested in. So I got into filmmaking really as a way to kind of voice my politics as an American Indian. As I was kind of like that young when you first find out about the world, and so I got into it with kind of maybe some aggression. My early shorts were it's interesting that I've traveled all the way to a family film because of how aggressive I was as a young maker. So my first feature, The Doughboy, went to Sundance in 2001, and I won the NHK award there, and just kind of moved from documentary to feature to editor, director, had a really, really eclectic journey. I'll give you an example of how eclectic. 2 years ago, I edited a horror movie called Windwalkers. I directed this movie, and I edited Johnny Depp's wedding video. So hopefully I didn't have any role in the demise of their union. It's kind of like that at everything from 30-second marketing pieces to feature work. I still work on American Indian reservations with tribes every summer with the youth, and that's basically, it's really like all over the place. And how I came to this movie in particular was I was by saying no every chance I got.
Okay.
Which is an interesting story. I was I wanted to I made a movie a couple of years ago called Among Ravens, and didn't know where the next feature was going to come to. Sometimes in independent filmmaking, you make a movie and it doesn't necessarily lead you to the next one. A lot of things have to go right. So I was kind of like trying to not edit anymore, figuring out how to direct the third feature, and I actually was the editor. I was the editor on this movie, and I eventually became the director. That story will leave to the people who were involved in it, but I was originally the editor, and I became the director. And it was quite an experience. I felt, because the production had already been going for a few days, 4 days, and I had just had a baby, my wife and I, so I didn't want to leave and be away from him. But I didn't want to miss this opportunity. So I basically got on a plane in a moment's notice and flew to Amarillo, then drove west to the set, and jumped on a train that was already going like at breakneck speed, and rewrote the script as we went, and it was everyone who makes a feature has this story about how hard it was, but they really are next to impossible to do, especially at the independent level where you're wringing every resource to every drop out of every resource, and you can't really afford for things to go wrong as they inevitably will. So we had an amazing team, a great young cast. Again, because I wasn't the original guy, I inherited the cast, and I was lucky to get an amazing young cast. Great performances by Trevor St. John and Richard T. Jones. Really grounded the movie, the young cast was kind of about young lives and young hearts, but these two veterans did a really beautiful job of sort of giving the film a center. And here we are. I'm really excited that it's gotten into 2 festivals. One is a faith-based festival in Orlando, and then of course DIFF. So it's being so far embraced by the secular world and the faith-based world. So we're really happy about the festival life ahead of us and seeing what happens this summer. So.
Yeah.
How much change was in the script?
You know what? I'll be really honest with you. I just I was really intimate with the script as someone who was about to try to cut it together, and I kind of just. I mean, I didn't even have one on set. I just kind of had a sense of what we were doing that day and kind of how I wanted it to flow. So I think being an editor is the reason that I could kind of pull it off in those conditions, because it's really, really different. The heart of it is there. There were only, I think, 2 scenes that I kept, and they were because of they were between the 2 veteran actors, and they were sitting in chairs, so it was kind of like it just worked. So luckily, I preserved those. Obviously because of that, we shot longer than they intended, and I had to dismiss one of my friends who had a role, and because as I was sort of streamlining the story, finding out what I needed and what I didn't need. There was a couple of characters I just didn't need. Like I fired some local actors that they cast. This is super edgy. It's like a family film, and I'm telling you this edgy story. So like,
well, this is called Edge of the World.
yeah, that's right, edgy of the world, and I just kind of, it was just every day like, okay, what are we doing? Like I didn't have a script forever, and that's not a happy thing to hear if you're a line producer, and if you're someone who's like needs to like send out this, call sheet even. Like, so I was throwing new lines at people, and Trevor St. John was like, I love this, because I think he's just like, it was a challenge for him, but I don't think everybody else loved that. So, it was really a trip, and we're really proud of what we were able to accomplish, because it was a good story, had a lot of heart, some really great values in it. And again, I've never made a family film before, and I just made it. Or a faith-based film, I didn't make it with any allegiance to that genre or really any knowledge of how they're put together in a conventional, like, I don't know if they're a certain way that they're put together. Like, I just had no allegiance to that genre, so I just made the movie the way I would make a movie.
That's smart.
Yeah. And, I mean, I've seen a couple of them, and I think they're getting better and better, but some of the ones that I've seen, like, I would not emulate, at gunpoint. But like, I think that's obviously changing, because there's a huge audience out there, so they're going to demand better and better stuff. So we hope we've made a film that, is inspiring and has good values. And as a new father, it means a lot to me to put something more wholesome into the world than maybe I did last time or have hitherto, because I used to hear that, like, Eddie Murphy's doing all these kid movies, or all these actors that were running around, like F-word and kid, like, and all suddenly they have kids and they're like in cartoons, and I understand that now. Although I don't want to stay there. It's back to rated R. But like, that's kind of makes me feel really good that
Your son will grow.
Yeah, he may be there and ruin it for everybody. Who knows? He's loud, but so that's a long-winded answer to one question. So
That's good.
Yeah.
How long did it take to shoot?
We shot, I wish I could answer that intelligently. I know that when we're shooting, oh gosh, I think we probably shot, it's longer than I've ever had on a movie. So it was probably 5 or 6 weeks, because of the circumstances I shared with you. I remember we were shooting a classroom scene with Megan Dalby, who's the young lady you see behind me in the center of the poster. And about my 4th or 5th day there, and she was really great, and I was really enjoying kind of crafting an arc for her that wasn't, I don't think, really there. And we shot a scene in the classroom, and all of a sudden the AD said, "That's a wrap on Megan." I had no idea she was leaving, and I knew that we were like halfway done with her story, so I begged, and I just basically just insisted that she be brought back, and so we could complete her arc. So, it was just stretched thin as it was, but it was something that really needed to happen. So they were all somehow I convinced them that the story, anything that I needed for the story, they really got behind me there. So in that sense, it was really a lot of support. So I think 5 or 6 weeks. I know I was there 5, so 5 weeks and 4 days, way longer than I've ever had. I think the longest, my first film was 4 6-day weeks, and then Ravens was like 19 days, which is insanity. It's like just insane. On Super 16, which is double insane. Yeah. So.
Was it crazy to have so many, like, each of the kids gets enough of their story told where there's not necessarily, I think, the lead kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think each one gets their own amount of time.
Yeah.
How much did that make it more difficult to have to not have maybe the lead, or did it make it a little bit easier so that you could focus maybe each little pathway for each kid?
Thank you for that question. That's a really astute question, and I'll share a story of my last movie. We shot, my last movie was an ensemble piece too, multi-narrative, very different characters, kind of like Big Chill kind of setup. And we got into the editing room and had a few screenings for people, and one of the notes we kept getting was, it doesn't have a point of view. You know, like even in a multi-narrative, there's usually a character whose eyes you sort of see the film through. Or it's like Magnolia, where everyone is going, there's a thematic synchronicity with everybody, and so everyone's going through the same thing, and that serves as the point of view, and that has to be really powerful. So usually, like Little Miss Sunshine, it was the little girl. So there's always that point of view, apropos your question. So we shot other scenes and added some elements to give the film sort of retrofit it with the missing point of view. So I swore I would never do another multi-narrative or work with horses or kids. So because I had that experience, I knew how important it was to have a point of view, and I felt like it might have been missing from the script that I inherited. I think it's The Coach, his movie. That, in reading it and thinking about it and making it, I felt like it was his movie. And that it's really his crisis of faith, professional faith, personal faith, confidence, really just his. I don't think he's a coach that cares about money. I think he just is a coach that's had his core shaken to the degree that he can't. He's a shell of himself, and that makes the stakes for the kids, which they're already high because of where they came from. That just elevates them for the kids. So he kind of heals himself and kind of refreshes himself and regains those attributes that he needs to lead, maybe a little bit earlier in the movie than is conventional if it wasn't a multi-narrative. But I felt it was important that he regain his mojo because the stakes for the kids are what you're going to be left with. That's what's going to make everybody feel good. So I think we pulled that off in 83 minutes. So that's a great question. Yeah, real super important to that there's a point of view. Yeah.
How was Richard T. Jones brought in?
He was there from the beginning. He did a really great job. He's powerful guy, powerful presence on set. A powerful presence on set. Did I say that already? I'm just kidding. And love you, Richard. And he did a really amazing job. And so the first day I got there, there's a big scene where there's like 60 extras, and they're coming back from a meet, and everyone's out there clapping, and that was my first day.
Oh.
So, and he was scheduled. I was looking at scenes, and I was just like, I don't think we need Richard in the scene. So there was I was there a week, and he was supposed to shoot every day I was there for the first week, and every day I said, we don't need you. So he thought, I don't know what he thought. I took some scenes that, there were his scenes, and kind of just chucked them. And I knew I was writing new scenes for him, and that he would eventually, that I eventually wouldn't need him. But that's kind of how we started, was the one nod to the faith-based realm in my limited experience with it was the walk and talk between the coach and Richard, the chaplain, kind of at dusk. I thought that was really important because what I did observe and what the scenes that between them and coach's office, I felt like what was going on was really profound and rare in terms of male relationships in media. Really in life, I mean, it's like if we get into, you know, a disagreement and it gets turned up, the threat of physicality because you're men is just kind of there. And it's really rare that there's two really good friends who can call each other out, say what you need to say, and it's intimate and there's enough trust that realm just isn't kind of there threatening it. And I know that's as a man that's something that is just part of life. It's like it's rare to have those friends as men that can really talk to you and tell you where you're messing up and, you know, get your act together. And I'm really proud of that in the movie. And I think that walk and talk that the coach is willing to be vulnerable to his friend is one of the most powerful moments in the script. And for me, I know that in the faith-based movies I've seen, there's always some scenes that are, I mean, I think the scripture, quoting scripture allows for elements of exposition that might not work in other movies. And for me, that was functioning like that, even though there's no scripture in it. It was sort of a moment where it's just about the words. So just go on a walk and share a conversation that's really intimate between, you know, two grown men. It's really lovely to me. Yeah.
Well, what he told me was that those two men are the perfect people for these troubled kids, because who were there in that home through no fault of their own, but because of their circumstance of their parents, and because all of these kids are kids of the state or foster kids or there for a limited time until their parents can get them back. And
Right.
you know, so that was a lovely example for kids that probably didn't grow up with that kind of example.
Right,
There,
thanks.
which I think is beautiful.
Richard has a moment. Well, I'll wait. I'll save that. Go ahead. Yeah.
This is based on a real person.
Nothing real about it. It's inspired by a value system. Really inspired by anyone who's had a mentor. It's inspired by the boys' ranches in the country, and yeah, but it's got nothing to do with like factual people. Believe me, the lawyers made sure of that. It was the longest E&O vetting of all time. But I was going to say, Richard has a moment, you know, with the Jeremy character, who's the one that bonds with him the most, the chaplain. And when Jeremy says that's the flesh in all of us, and he says, "Is it in you too?" And there's a little moment. He answers without answering. He says, "We're all made of the same stuff." So you know that even the chaplain is subject to, you know, life. So that was one of my favorite moments with Richard. Yeah.
You said you're involved with the post-production process, heavily involved. How much do you think about post-production editing when you're actually shooting the film?
Because I do both a lot, and I'll tell you I learned the hard way. Like it's like you know, you want to just go to a young person and go, "I've done this 18 times and it ruined my life every time. Please don't do it." And they have to do it themselves, right? So like I think of it too much. Like I feel like I know what I'm going to do, and I don't. I do sometimes. Sometimes it works out perfectly. But in Doughboy, we shot this crane shot. We craned up out of the back of a pickup truck in through the window of an airplane hangar, and it was tiny, like at the very other end of the airplane hangar. The dad and the son are kind of walking and talking, and then I'm like, "That's it," because I love the shot. And like my producer's like, "You're out of your mind. You got to get beside him." And so we shot the end of the scene nice and tight. And I never did get them close walking. I got in the editing room, I'm like an idiot, you know. Like it was the worst like I just had to go from this gigantic, like wide lens of an airplane hangar and these tiny little people. It took them, you know, it was 2.5 minutes before they got to where you could even see them. So I had to do like some, you know, not very elegant dissolve, you know. So I've learned not to do that much, but I still do probably, you know, edit a little too much ahead of time, like while I'm shooting. In the case of Edge of the World, it saved my life thinking that way, and it kind of worked out. There's stuff I wish I would have gotten, but I didn't paint myself into too many corners. And I kept thinking, Bruce Lee's that famous interview where he said, it's not the daily increase, it's the daily decrease, hack away at the unessential. And that was my mantra. And I just kept that sort of in my head, and I was just like, what is the essential part of like what we're trying to do in this scene, the shot that'll not just illustrate the dialogue, but that'll move the movie forward. Like I just tried to hack away at the unessential. So in the case of that scene in the Doughboy, it screwed me. In the case of Edge of the World, it saved me, and I've screwed myself in small ways and screwed myself in giant ways and been right. You know, it's like another thing I learned, because I co-directed Among Ravens, my last film, and I edited it. And this is for young filmmakers, because you hear things like you shouldn't edit your own stuff, you're too close to it. And you just kind of accept that. And there's a truth to that. You know it's true, but I think I figured out why it's true. I feel like I invented this even. I feel like I discovered why it's true. Because my co-director is in this chair, I'm in this chair. The difference between us is I've got a chore to do. Mm-hmm. So if he had a good idea, I process it first through the chore that I have to do. And so I would fight him on a good idea, because I'm going, man, I'm like, you asshole, I gotta look at all the stuff I have to do. Like, so then I would come to my senses as if it was a good idea, but it was like when I get out of the editor's chair and just sit there, I come to that decision a lot quicker. It's like a DP, if he liked this side of the room. You're filmmakers, how many, you like the side of the room, shoot everything that you told him you wanted, he likes that side of the room, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just got I've done that to DPs, and they're like, and I'm just like, well, what's a great idea, why not you? Because they're processing it through that chore. So I learned that, too, but that's why you don't preferably edit your own stuff. So what did I do? I edited that movie.
Oh yeah, well.
But again, we were married to certain circumstances that my wife was the assistant editor, and just to show you what a mom and pop operation, she did the poster. I wrote the press release. It's like there were too many hats. So it was like a lot of autonomy. Like it was really a dream situation. The creative freedom that I had, and so my next movie is called Tearjerker, and it's probably rated R, and I'm preparing myself to not edit.
Okay.
Were there any instances during this one that mindset really did, was there any instances where it really saved the day?
I feel like it was every day. I know that sounds really, yes, thank you. Okay, thanks for jarring my foggy memory. There was a scene, you know who Billy Worth is? Mm-hmm. Lost Boys, yeah. American Gladiators, no Billy, he's a buddy of mine. And he's actually attached to a film I'm gonna make in the future. And he was there happily, he was on this movie. I was like, Billy, and he had a role, and he was kind of, it's like, what am I gonna do with this guy? How do I bring him into he was kind of a ABC, like a G character. He's like a small character, but he intersected the A plot in this profound way. You know when Jay tries to escape and the coach is there, that was this G character. So you can't be doing that. I'm like, you can't wander into the A story in the very early second act, I think. And if you're a G character, that messes up the coach's arc, and it's his movie. It's coming to this realization, so I had to call my friend and say, you gotta get out of here.
Oh, wow.
And this was like 10 days into it.
Wow.
So it saved me, and if I would have gotten back and had this very minor character intersect my A story at the 9-minute mark, and I would have been screwed, triple screwed. So that saved me. It was not an easy conversation to have. I was up on the top of the hill, you know, having an asthma attack, like telling the producers, please do not, like I was like, don't let the G character intersect the A plot at minute 9, or you're gonna hose us. Like, I was like that passionate about it. And they're like, okay, I'm like, I'll tell Billy. And that night I'm like, you know, I called him up and I'm just, he was like, he knew it, because he's a storyteller, so he knew it. Yeah, so we're cool. Like, we're all good. But so he was in the movie and he's not. So
Wow.
that's what happened. That was not an easy phone call. It had nothing to do with him. He's awesome. You know? It had nothing to do with him. So things like that. Yeah. Do you imagine, like, if somebody wandered, like, that has to be the coach.
Yeah.
Like, that has to be the coach. So things like that.
Can you talk about shooting, the actual running, the track stuff? I mean, it looked like a lot of,
Holy.
I mean, you didn't do a lot of follow shots, or it didn't look like you had a rig. I mean, it looked like everything was set.
Yeah.
Talk about shooting it that way and maybe not a different way.
We shot. Okay, so those are epic. One is really epic. We shot all of the races, including the scrimmage. Are you ready for this? 4 days.
Wow.
And I got coverage, and I told the story. So we had, we were on Steadicam for some of it. We were, you know, like in a little, you know, 4x4 little gator with a Steadicam guy off the back for some of that stuff where we're leading them. So we led and followed them from a vehicle. But I also wanted to give each race like a idea. So Jeremy's race is mostly, like you said, locked off. Like nature's a big part of it, like flower, you know, we kind of just made it about a softer palette, like because he was gonna go through something so personal in the scene. The original, so the Lubbock, and there was also, oh man, so like I forgot about this. So there was a whole scene where the Brentmore coach, played by Texas native Rex Lynn, who's just awesome. You cannot tell he's acting. He seems acting when he's not acting. Like, so like he's just so good. And like where he like went to the scorers table and told on them for having those bracelets, and it was a big deal, and they were gonna get disqualified. So Willie kind of snuck. There was a whole Steadicam scene through the track, through the event space, where Willie was like, "You gotta give me your bracelets, give me your bracelets." Like it was a whole 2 hours of shooting, and you don't need it. Why? Because it's enough that they're trying to box Jay in. Like it's enough that they instigated a fight. So I just felt like it was a little thematically redundant to have. You know, I think a lot of times, this is for young writers and older writers. If you don't trust your story, you double down on things like that. Like you have 3 things that are serving the same purpose, and so he's already instigated a fight. He's already playing dirty. You don't need the bracelet intrigue. You know, it's kind of, he's already like being an a-hole. So like that, those races, we just moved really quickly. Again, what's the bare minimum that I need to tell the story while still making it somewhat compelling and emotional? And you know, everybody's got to have their arc. Willie's always last, but that's just an idea that I had for his character. You look at him and he's like muscular. He's like such an athlete. So like, I felt like if it wouldn't have made sense unless we said something like it's hard to breathe sometimes, but not make a giant deal out of it. Mm-hmm. Just that it's hard to breathe and there's cottonwood seed all over the place, and maybe you'll buy it. But I think we pulled it off. I mean, it would have been nice. I mean, a feature they would have shot that race for 2 weeks. They would have shot that race for 2 weeks. Yeah, so we shot those in 4 days. Everybody did a great job, and everybody was shocked that we pulled it off in that time. And there was unlike other elements of the movie, there was no way to not do it in that time because of what a big deal it was to get all those extras and from where they came from. It was a much bigger deal. If I had said I need 1 more day for the races, I think that would have sunk us the ship somehow. So,
Well, each of the kids had, I mean, like an emotional breakthrough moment, and I mean, they were all just so riveting.
thank you.
So,
Thank them.
yeah, can you talk about going through that with them, and just what it was like to direct them during those moments?
You know what? Again, thankfully they were really good.
Yeah.
And so I always think like indie movies are just the hardest to make, because if you have all the money in the world, a studio behind you, and the best, most highly trained actors on the planet, and you only have to think about this performance, and you get to rehearse for 2 weeks. I mean, that sounds easy to me. It really does. So when you first you start with good actors, and then my job is really just to like, just like maybe just like shape it. Yeah. Like and I didn't. There weren't any moments where I was like kind of stumped by what they were doing. I will say that Jeremy's arc changed completely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was literally at the end of the movie he decided he wanted to be a minister, and ran into the church all excited, like instead of he didn't really he never got drugged into the mud. And he's the quiet one. He's the most integrated in terms of following the rules. He goes on a little mini winning streak as a runner. So I was like, this guy we have to drag him through some crap. So, and then I also, unconventionally maybe like after kind of the big win where Willie kind of frees Jay and Dwight and them hug, and it's kind of a happy moment, but Jay's in the bus. After that moment, I wanted to deflate everybody again, because for me, it was about showing up. Like, you win the race or not, and there's another race, So for me, that's why it ends at the start, because I feel like in life, you have to show up again next week, tomorrow, next season, and if you take the loss too hard, and if maybe you don't, and not showing up for whatever the race is the difference, all the difference in a young person's life. Not showing up, believing in yourself when no one else does, or thinking you're good when everyone says you're crap is that's the hardest thing. So they were great. It's just little touches, except for maybe with Jeremy, where just his arc changed so much that maybe there was more discussion, but he was great. Yeah. So thankfully nobody gave me a real hard time. Like, yeah. There were some really inexperienced actors, and some veteran actors, and sometimes when you get that, there's a performance that'll just be way down here, and I feel like it's pretty even for the array of differences in the level of experience. I'm pretty proud of the even keel that the drama is on. It's not perfectly even, but it's pretty proud of it given the different levels of experience. Yeah. A lot of people's first movie.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah. So, great questions. Not everybody asks good questions, but trust me.
That's why I like doing these.
Yeah. Not everybody does that. So.
Well, you said there was something that you said, I'll hold that for later. With Richard?
I did share it. It was the moment,
Oh,
yeah, where Jeremy says is the flesh in you too.
Oh, I see.
And he's like, we're all made of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a new scene that I wrote for those characters. So that was.
Okay.
I just love Richard, just the way his performance in that.
Yeah.
It's really understated. Trevor's really understated. Those guys, you cannot tell I can't tell.
No.
Like Trevor was like, I just don't want it to look like acting, and it's like that's so, like such a paradox. Like you're acting, I just don't want it to be. He's just super real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. and
Solid
subtle.
and
Solid.
and quiet. Both of them are very quiet.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah. There's less loud stuff out there. Yeah.
Are you gonna have family be able to watch the screening here in Dallas?
My whole family will be there. Does that what you mean? Yeah, like
Yeah.
And I'm worried about, it's like, I think there should be like, like you go to the roller, because kids are a pain in the butt at movies. So I'm hoping there's like a thing where it's like you have to be this tall to get into
Well,
this.
I know.
But like if there's a bunch of 3-year-olds, because I have one of those, like I'm probably going to be in the fetal position in the projection booth. Because I want everyone to sit straight ahead and watch my movie and say
Of course.
say nothing to anybody. So like if someone just goes like this, I'm like, oh my. So there's a bunch of kids. I don't know. I'm gonna program like a 3-minute horror short before it's run out, and it'll just be grown-ups. But no, I'm half joking. So we'll see what happens. But I'm super happy to be there. Like I was really happy because Dallas was the first festival that contacted us. We're 2 for 3 so far.
That's awesome.
So we'll see. And at the International Christian Film Festival, we've got 5 nominations, and I'll be in Orlando at that the day before.
What are the nominations for?
Best Picture, Best Director, that's me. Best Actor, Trevor St. John, Best Supporting Actor, and for the screenplay, which mine,
What's it?
Really
Which
happy.
one's supporting actor?
Richard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think they deserve it.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
so that's gonna be fun. Very different festival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you well, you said 2 of the 3, are you searching more for faith-based entrance, or
You know what?
just happenstance?
I wasn't sure what again, it's been, in June it'll be, I don't know if this is, I shot this a little bit ago because there were some things that slowed us down. So I didn't know I knew my mom liked it. Okay. I didn't know exactly what I had.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was a good movie. My last movie I got just beat into oblivion by the critics. My first movie was, beloved and Sundance and all that. So I didn't know, I could still get beat to oblivion by critics, but I didn't know what we had. I didn't know if it was just going to be, embraced outside. I didn't know, so I just threw the rock in both ponds or whatever. So I'm not, and the festivals that I've submitted to are, if there's a good family or faith-based festival, one that I think is right for it, I'll submit. But I think at this point it's mostly not. Yeah, because I'm not from that. Like, just not from that. So I didn't know. Like, I'm happy. I'm pleasantly surprised that it's here. And now I'm not surprised anymore because we're here. It would be silly to be surprised that we're actually here. So, yeah. Exactly.
Will some of the young actors be?
All of them except Willie, or his name is Juan. He plays Willie. Juan can't make it. I chastised him for that on Facebook.
Good.
Shamed him in front of his followers. Will Myers, who plays Jeremy, will be here. Megan Dalby, who lives in Dallas. Jonathan Davis, who plays Jay. Noah Alford, who plays Dwight, will be here. So 4 of the 5 kids. Trevor will be here. And tons of the crew. My DP, Gilbert Salas, who did a beautiful job. We could have saturated this movie. We shot on 2 reds, so we had a lot of color space, but we were trying to make it like a little more muted, like Tender Mercies, and we just kind of gave it a look that was a little restrained in terms of what we could have done with the color, on purpose. He did a really great job. He'll be here. Some people from Boys Ranch and outside of Amarillo will be here. Everybody's mom and dad. There's a really vibrant community on our Facebook page, like a really engaged community, and everybody's really excited. And then of course a bunch of my high school buddies, my family. Like I'm gonna try. I don't have to be sold out.
Yes.
Yeah. So there will be no chairs for 4-year-olds.
Right. We'll just take the chairs for the
Yeah.
4-year-olds. No.
I'm just kidding. So
Intro.
yeah.
I didn't say that.
I'm kidding. So yeah, bunch of. Richard can't make it. Everybody, Richard no, and one no. Everyone else up there. Stephanie, who played the counselor, can't make it. Even though she's from Amarillo, that was her first movie.
Oh, wow.
And she can't make it,
Didn't
unfortunately.
you say the woman who played Jeremy's mom lived here?
Molly Milligan, who lives in Dallas, she'll be here too. Yeah, and by the way, those were not on her. That's VFX.
Oh, wow.
Michael Doe.
That was amazing.
Yeah, she was, a little beautiful for the role. I was like, is there any way we can make her less beautiful? So, but again, we needed a lot of these roles weren't cast. Like we were still, we just like we got to get someone here, and she did a great job, and pulled it off with